and the rental costs have been skyrocketing. And of course, the classical strategy for containing the costs of rents for people who already were inside their apartments that they were renting or whatever domiciles they were renting is um, the is rent control. And as you probably have seen, if you're in the state of California, the No on Prop 33 campaign, right? Surprise, surprise, funded by people who are making incredible levels of profit off of the current way that housing is operating inside California, are funding the No on Prop 33 campaign to block the capacity of Californians in their own communities to allow for rent control. And the way they're running their campaign is to make this sort of macroeconomic argument about rent control. Well, I suppose it's a microeconomic and macroeconomic argument about rent control central to the campaign. And so the economist Ken Rosen is the face of the No on Prop 33 campaign that is so flooding the airwaves and of course digital media as well, that it may well turn out to be the most expensive single campaign in the history of California ballot propositions. They're flooding that much money and that much advertising with this economist as he's just saying, he's asserting economists understand that rent control is bad for the development of affordable housing. And this is such orthodoxy among a school of economics that has been dominant. It's true, it has been dominant in the American Academy, that of course, icon of all icons of this school of economics, Milton Friedman, his first influential paper was a paper written against rent control. So we have economist Mark Paul joining us, and he wrote a great article about a year ago negating this argument, and you'll get to hear from him. I think this is very important as we build this campaign. People are already voting, but we really have to build a campaign with solid arguments that have very concise talking points, but also have the depth of argument and a strong foundation with detail underneath it. And I think you'll all be thrilled to hear from Mark and what he has to say about how rent control as a strategy actually impacts or doesn't impact the development of new housing stock. And believe me, it's favorable to us, and what is going out over the airwaves from the No on Prop 33 campaign is very, very, intellectually irresponsible and basically propaganda points that are being sent out with using the economists to provide them with an authoritative voice. So, and this is a campaign we can win now. Californians want to see housing costs contained. The population has been left disempowered without a strategy to contain the costs going into this election cycle. More so, and I think considerably more so than in previous times when similar ballot initiatives were available for Californians, the public support for this initiative in polls was high. But now we're in a phase where there's the flood of propaganda hitting the population, and that's where we come in. And this campaign that we're going to be leading at PDA is, of course, going to be involved, as you'll hear across this meeting, involved in traditional ways of contacting voters. Some new digital ways of contacting voters, but also in grounding the arguments that will be shared with all of you, and we can share with everybody that that we can reach. That this is the right thing to do. This is not something that's just being done so that the people who could have access to rent control, it's their benefit and no one else's. That is all not the case. This will be a rebellion against the cost of housing in the United States that will have reverberations across the whole country. It will show all elected political officials that the public expects them to do the right thing and make affordable housing available and to contain the cost of housing in the country. And it will be a great victory for the welfare of all middle class, working class, upper middle class, and poor people in this country. And also, it will definitely be a blow for allowing there to be housing for people who have to suffer homelessness, which is, of course, an incredible human tragedy. And we know that that is now epidemic as well. So we're going to hear from Alex Lee. We're going to hear from economist Mark Paul. We're going to hear from Susie Shannon. we're going to hear from Mike Olis, incredible national organizer who is now working on this campaign with us, who's going to introduce a new way that we're going to be advocating for this. Hey, David, right? Mike Thaler, you have your hand up, so you're up next. And then David, and then Alex Lees joined us, and we'll go to Alex right after we hear from Mike and David, our San Diego contingent here.
As I said a little earlier, I am president of PDA-CA, and PDA-CA is, of course, the California, what would you call it, a PAC that's associated with PDA. And this is a California issue, which is why we're sponsoring this, this town hall or meeting. But just a couple things. I'm also the chair of the senior caucus of the California Democratic Party. And Prop 33 has some ramifications that are positive for seniors, because seniors have a tendency, well, due to the economy's ups and downs over the while we were working, many of us don't make a good living, or are only living on Social Security and were laid off when the economy got bad, because we were the ones that were getting paid the most. So many of us can't afford house payments, and many of us can't, which will drive us into either being homeless or trying to find rental property. And without Prop 33, we won't even be able to afford rental property. So this is very personal to me and the rest of the seniors in the state or anywhere else for that matter. And that's why I was so happy to be able to have PDA-CA sponsor this meeting and educate people as to why Prop 33 is a good thing. So that's my 2 cents worth. I'm going to hand it back to Alan, and remind Alan, if you didn't notice, Alex Lee is here. All right. So thank you very much, and take it away.
Well, I know that David wanted to say something, and maybe Mike Glick, but if you guys can be quick, just maybe a minute or so, and then we'll get to Assemblyman Member Lee. David, please unmute, and then Mike Glick, please unmute.
I yield to Mr. Glick.
Oh, thank you, David. Mr. Glick.
I read what Prop 33 does, and it's a one-line proposition, and all it does is it deletes the, what's it called, Costa-Hawkins?
Costa-Hawkins, right.
So it deletes Costa-Hawkins, and as a small mom and pop landlord, I've got one rental, and I inherited my parents' house as a second rental. And I've always kept my rents way below market because I attract really good tenants that way. But the problem is, if I'm not exempt from rent control, I can't do that, because the reason I've been able to do that is because I knew if push came to shove, I could raise rents if I needed the money. But I've always kept them, I mean, like literally over 1,000 below market per month. But if they delete Costa-Hawkins, what prevents the mom and pop landlords from being lumped in with everybody else on rent control?
Well, okay, the main thing that Costa-Hawkins prohibits, and the main thing that this will free up, is it doesn't impose rent control anywhere. It allows for, and it takes away the barriers for towns and city councils to establish rent control in their communities, which is basically blocked now by Costa-Hawkins. And though there's some nuance to that, but
yeah, it's very nuanced. It's not blocked. It's just the only exemptions are for mom and pop people like me. The corporate landlords are not exempt. So like right now,
there are dates in terms of when buildings are built and things like that too.
That too, but right now, like my parents' house in Pasadena has extensive rent control, but I'm exempted because I'm a mom and pop. And like I said, that's something that your township can take up. There's no reason that can't be taken up by the township, right? Where and for certainly I have no
feeling of guilt or qualms about your situation, because I think that's going to be a persuasive argument within townships. And secondarily, I would be very surprised if there's a movement in any given town to not extend that to mom and pops, or have maybe even some kind of 2 steps there. You know, if you are below market rate, then that would extend to you. If you are market rate, it wouldn't extend to you. You'd have to be, adhere to rent control, but that would be for the township to determine. And given the incredible breadth of renters across California who are not facing landlords like yourself, to continue at Costa-Hawkins, I think is terrible for renters across California who make up. I think you can recognize you're rare. You're you're an outlier. Okay, most landlords are not providing.
Right. Most landlords have to make a profit, and I'm fortunate because also with Prop 19, I inherited my parents' property tax basis, which is really low. They bought the house in 19.
The level of profit taking from the corporate landlords, my understanding is it's incredibly extreme. But alas, thank you for the point. We're going to really have a conversation at the end of the meeting. But we're going to again hear from economist Mark Paul, who had to pre-record. I again want to apologize for having the meeting on Yom Kippur. I'm Jewish self-identified, but I'm secular household growing up and everything. And but I'm fully respectful of people who are observant, and I feel bad about scheduling the meeting at this time. So I apologize for that. And as a consequence, we're going to have, again, as you'll see, when we get to the organizing part of this call, we're going to have a meeting as soon as Tuesday to get all of our actions in motion fully as of Tuesday. But with that, Assemblymember Alex Lee, I'm going to give Alex Lee a really, really broad, big canvas assessment of American politics type of introduction. In 2016, in 2014 and 15, PDA drafted a relatively unknown senator from Vermont to run for president. And we were the people who did the Bernie Run campaign. And Bernie was able to, run against Hillary Clinton, far exceed expectations. And in doing so, reintroduce to the American public a set of policies and approaches to their lives that would affect their lives living in 21st century America. And it created just an incredible, it established a new kind of gravity for left progressive politics. People all across the country embraced them in ways that hadn't been the case in all of the 21st century preceding that, and for the last few decades of the 20th century. And as a progressive movement, we remain fully committed to that vision. And we believe, and the reason we do is that we believe that those policies are the best policies for 21st century America. And right now we're sitting at a moment where, and I thought this was going, I could see this coming in 2024, where progressives without a presidential candidate to sort of, keep this center stage in front of the American public are being told that we're remarginalized. And we at PDA are never going to allow that to happen. And we are thrilled to have elected officials like Alex Lee in the California State Assembly. Because folks, if you don't know about Alex, who's from up in the South Bay area where he represents, he is just an absolutely fantastic, progressive, no holds barred in the interests of working people, middle-class people, poor communities. The vast majority of Americans do not have champions in elected office like Alex Lee is a champion for the people of his district. And we have to really hold on to and elevate politicians like Alex Lee in this very upcoming set of years in American political history. And we have to prevent the remarginalization of progressives, and we have to take it the other way. We have to build this movement and get more people who are going to stand up and be no holds barred progressives elected to higher office in our society. So with that, Alex Lee, your thoughts on housing costs in California, how much of a negative impact they are having in California society writ large, and the role of Prop 33 in really building a movement to address the crisis of housing in California.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Alan. I've never been introduced in the context with Bernie Sanders before, so that is quite an honor. Thank you for doing that. Hello, everyone. Just very quickly, my name is Alex Lee. I represent the 24th Assembly District, which is northern Santa Clara County, southern Alameda County in the Bay Area. I'm chair of the California Legislative Progressive Caucus, so I'm the chair of all the progressive legislators. And I also serve on the Renters Caucus, which there are only 5 of us in a legislature of 120 people. And just so to give you a sense, and I just coined or penned an op-ed in Common Dreams about the work I do on social housing, which, is a different kind of day we talk about, but we need to produce more affordable housing from the public sector. But I talked about how, most people in California, probably most people on this call, are housing cost burden. You pay way too much for rent or way too much on your mortgage and taxes together. And I'm one of the people that struggles to afford to buy a home ever in my district. The average home price in my district right now is $1.65 million, and that's just the average below. And it fluctuates year after year. Sometimes it goes 200,000 more, sometimes it goes like $50,000 less, but it's still within that average. So we have a real housing crisis that fundamentally threatens the fabric of California. And how you're seeing unravel is that families are priced out of communities that they've grown up in, much in my generation too. And so you see less families means less enrollment in schools, means school districts are collapsing, many across the state where you're talking about school closures or they can't pay enough teachers, and the structure just isn't working. We are, as a state, ever since its founding, has been about growth, right? We've, for one reason or another, had a lot of immigration and a lot of people come here for more opportunity. And when the first time in this last redistricting, we actually lost pace and we lost a congressional seat because that we did not grow fast enough. And this is a real crisis, not just politically, but of course, in the growing numbers of people who are becoming unhoused, the growing people who cannot afford to buy or even rent their own home. And I do believe that Prop 33 is an important step on this. Now, it's, of course, as many of you are familiar, perhaps the third statewide attempt to finally enable systemic rent control laws, a uniform system, hopefully, across the state. And what I mean by that is in the 90s, so about actually when I was born, the Costa-Hawkins was actually put into place. And I know there's a question about Costa-Hawkins, but Costa-Hawkins basically froze in state law across the state, no matter what kind of city you were, no what kind of landlord or renter you were, a very specific type of policy that has not really kept up with the reality of the world, right? So even if you're a decently sized landlord and you're not just Blackstone, BlackRock, your rules governing your rental properties is so dependent on the jurisdiction you're in, the age of your units, the type of your units, and there's so many different rules that it becomes very confusing for each and everyday people. Who benefits from that system is the in growing, gigantic firms out there, the corporation landlords that are funneling money to oppose Prop 33 because they don't want any sort of system. They don't want any uniformity, but they also don't want local cities to decide for themselves what's the best policy. Because maybe it makes more sense to have rent stabilization for newer units or different types of units or different types of tenants. But really, any of cities you live in right now basically have very little say in the kind of rent ordinances they want to do. And even doing so is very difficult within that parameter. So hearing some of the concerns is really, if we're able to pass Prop 33, at least it will enable your city to go forward and figure out the tailored approach that matches its citizenry, its residents. And maybe down the line, we can have a more uniform standard across the state. Because when you have more uniformity and understanding, most landlords, even if your landlord's called, you probably aren't going to have all units all in one jurisdiction, unless I guess you're in the city of Los Angeles, which is a very large jurisdiction. But you can have a lot of, you can have neighboring towns, right? They could be different. So it's really important that we have sensible rent control laws that are uniform and for renters and landlords to understand. And just so we understand this is, this is not an outright saying all rent will be capped at $500 a month or something like that, right? We're just talking about rent stabilization, talking about how much rent can increase from lease to lease, how much someone should expect. Because one of the greatest inventions that we still benefit from this today, from the just post-war era, is that fixed rate mortgage, right? And that unlocked home ownership for so many people because there was a predictable payment on your mortgage over time. Renters, especially today, do not have any of that predictability in their budget. So from lease to lease, year to year, your rent could jump 200%, 500%. And oftentimes, if you're renting a different type of unit or different age of unit, or your landlords are different, and many times tenants don't know these differences, right? You could really be scammed or hit with really large rent increases. And of course, these are speed limits, right? These aren't saying that everyone must push their rents up to the stabilization level. If you are the rare, awesome landlord out there that doesn't minimize and maximize the costs and rents out there, that's awesome. But this law doesn't push you or force you to do that, right? And unfortunately, what we're doing is we are creating the speed limits, right? We're
Actually,
creating speed limits for
that's
people that
awesome.
are speeding, not for the people that keep to sensible speeds. So that's why it's important that we have these sensible laws in place. And this is really a really big first step in making sure we can accomplish localized rent ordinances and really making sure that today is reflected in tomorrow. And just my last point on that is to really just say is that in functioning rental markets in our peer countries in Europe and Asia, there's always a healthy mix of renter or resident rights and stabilization as well as production, right? So you have to have an equal balance mixture of the policies in order to have a really great housing and stable market. So that's really my pitch about Prop 33. And of course, I'm a proud supporter of Prop 33 and really hope we can push it over the finish line.
What's your, and I don't know how it is where you are, and I know you're, well, we know from the cost of housing, the average cost of housing in your district, if people haven't guessed, your district is seen as one of the districts that covers Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, yes.
And it's how much are the no on Prop 33 ads flooding the airwaves and the digital feeds in your district?
Oh, we have a lot. I guarantee that if people see an ad on Prop 33, it's an anti, to the point where a lot of people ask me, what is Prop 33? What is it, right? So it's probably mostly anti.
Yeah, no, actually, they have a really good ad that did pop into the Dodgers Padres game the other day, which features Kamala Harris saying her, articulating her support for rent control. Very well done ad, actually better ad than the Harris campaign's been putting out, but for Prop 33, and a very effective use of Harris because, of course, most California voters are going to vote for her for president. Yeah. And but what do you? I mean, we as progressives nationally in PDA, we had all during the spring and the summer the experience of having progressive candidates face astronomical amounts of money going against them in their primaries. And then we see this with Prop 33. What's your thought? This is a bit of a tangential question. What's your thoughts about how do we convey to the public that when you are getting flooded by negative ads about a ballot proposition or about a candidate, that they need to internalize and understand, chances are these guys are the bad guys. They're the reactionary big money interests, because I worry that people still don't get this yet. And, it should be clear that these people are funded because they can afford this level of campaign. They are protecting what is making and allowing them to be very wealthy in a context where the whole society understands that housing in California is basically broken right now. So, yeah, just your thoughts on the money and politics component of this particular race.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking as one of two legislators, the entire state legislature, entire state government that doesn't take any corporate money whatsoever, this system we have of corporate money and politics is everywhere, right? It's like an oil spill that's touched everything. Fortunately, though, in California, we have the disclosure law. So after every big ad on TV or something, you see that really big third of the margin says paid for by the California Apartment Association and realtors. Now, I always tease even Senator Sanders there is that you guys need to get a California-style disclosure law, because every federal ad, it just says, paid for by the most patriotic people in America PAC, right? It doesn't say who funds that, right? I think as time is changing and voters are very tired of, obviously, the housing crisis and understand very simply how much corporate greed is keeping prices astronomically high as part of it, is that they see those disclosures, and it does, I think, really help turn the tide. I think without those disclosures, things would much honestly be worse for us. But with those disclosures, people are like, well, I see the ad is being paid for by real estate. I see the ad was paying by so-and-so. And I think that helps people pay attention to it. And also on the ballot too, is now you'll see the top funders or top supporters and opponents of a ballot measure too. And I think that will help people make more of a rational, informed decision. And I don't think generally people cry a lot over big real estate.
And I have one very final quick question. The way that I see this politically, so really in just bullet points, headline type politics, is a victory for Prop 33 will be recognized across the country as a victory for middle class, working class, poor people who want to have affordable housing available to them, not only because it raises up the strategy of rent control, but it will be an expression of how the housing market is broken. And do you share that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not to my knowledge, I'm not even aware of any blue state that has systematically taken a big first step at establishing a more stable sense of rent control, right? Even our friends in New York, they struggle to do getting just cause evictions on the books that we have now in California. They struggle to do very common sense, damping on price increases from lease to lease. And I think this is a really big win. I mean, especially now as the housing crisis is a national issue, much more than California, I think this is going to play into a bigger issue in our future presidential races, future Congress races, that people need to act on housing, which is a fundamental human right, and that people are being priced out as far as even, the East Coast and the South, and they really need to have a lot more protections in place for everyday people while we produce more affordable housing.
Mike Glick and Robert look like they have a question for the assembly member. Please unmute Mike and Robert. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Alex, actually, what just the threat of Prop 33 forced me to do right now was raise my rents to market value, because I was $1,000 a month below. And rent control in Pasadena, where one of my rentals is I think it's 2.8% per year. And the reason I keep my rents low is because I inherited my parents' property tax basis from 1953.
Try to make the question short, because we did hear you earlier, and this was on the call.
Okay. And because I don't really need the money right now, but I can't get stuck if I get subject to pass. The only reason I'm exempt right now is because of Costa-Hawkins. If I'm not exempt, I can't get stuck that far below rent because I'm 68. What if I get sick and I need the money? I can't raise the rent. I'm not a corporate landlord. I have one rental that I bought in the house I inherited from my folks. You guys this is like a broad brush sledgehammer approach to the thing, and you're not being nuanced about it. I'm sorry. And I'm a progressive. I've been listening to KPFK for 40 years. I'm a total progressive.
I appreciate it, but let's hear the assembly member answer, please, Alex.
Yeah, Mike, just to reiterate your point, I don't know exactly every nuance in your situation, right? But if there was, Prop 33 were to pass and say you're renting in jurisdictions that don't already have rent control of any sort, the local jurisdiction can then tailor their approach to whatever the citizenry or the residents really care about, right? They can do their own carve-outs, they can do whatever it makes sense. But the fact of the matter is the core of Costa-Hawkins today does not benefit mom and pop landlords. It doesn't. That's the fact. The fact of it today is that the status quo of the law really, really supports the large corporate landlords. That's why they threaten constantly in ads. They say that, oh, if you pass this, we'll no longer produce any more housing because there's no market incentive anymore to do so. Because they understand that in our suppressed world that we live in, the suppressed market, it actually does well for them. So I would say, yes, I am sympathetic to this issue, and I understand that there can be nuances and things that can be done. But in the larger context and the greater good of it, this really does hamper on what many, many more residents are affected by.
Robert had his hand up, but he took it down. But do you still want to speak, Robert? But then Dorothy, please unmute. You're next. If Robert
yes,
doesn't...
I'll go ahead.
Oh, please go ahead, Robert.
So I'm asking Alex if he could address the issues that are brought up on the ads against Prop 33. And are there any laws that dealing with evictions, are they affected? Those are my two questions.
Yeah, so only of the snippet, I don't know if we've seen the same ads. So the anti-ads that I've seen basically say, if you pass Prop 33, right, it'll make less affordable housing will be built, we'll be worse off, et cetera, right? That's at least the genre of ads that I have seen. I don't see any more different ones than you have.
Well, they've added in the one about Newsom having signed a law that they boldly claim is the strongest rent control protection in the country, and that it'll be right.
Let's say here's the thing, like that statement is one of those things where it's like it's true, but doesn't mean a lot kind of thing. And rent control laws in this country are not super great in the first place. So to have the best one in a low is kind of a low bar. Although to say is, look, I kind of talked about this is so some of the claims they say where if you pass Prop 33 or you have rent control, you have rent stabilization, it'll produce less affordable housing. It's because certain producers of housing will see it as only market incentives, right? So if there any way that harms their bottom line, they will think in their mind that we don't want to build or do anything, which I'm sure, as you have an economist later will talk about, is a load of BS, because at the end of the day, if someone doesn't decide to get in a red hot housing market, they're abdicating their market share. The reality is someone will come in here in the total market capitalist system we have for housing, someone will be there to profit. If you're not willing to profit at 10%, someone I guarantee will profit at 9%. That's the thing. That's just how our system works. And so when they threaten to say that they'll produce less housing, it's a threaten to say that they don't like that system. They complain. At the end of the day, housing still ends up happening. And we see this a lot in Sacramento. The law about evictions that you heard about and that Alan just brought up, yes, we did pass just cause, which means you have to be evicted for a cause. You can't just be like, well, one day you're gone kind of thing. We passed just cause evictions. But that's not touched by Prop 33.
There's this other thing too, which I think is part of the common sense logic for voters and why voters support rent control so much, and I think can think their way through the case that Ken Rosen makes in those 30-second ads, which is that, yeah, housing is being built in California. It's not affordable. It's overwhelmingly not affordable. And so how can you have any less affordable housing being built when very little, almost no affordable housing is being built? So it really betrays the failure of their argument on that front. How much worse could it be? Dorothy, you're up, and then Mike, we're gonna go to Robert before you. We have to let people speak who haven't spoken yet. Dorothy,
I just wanted to give a shout out to Trent Lang, because it's due to his hard work that every time you see an ad against Prop 33 in big letters, you see that it's sponsored by the California Apartment Association. And without that, we would all be in the dark as to what was going on. So thank you, Trent Lang. I would say, Mike Glick, you should be thanking your lucky stars that that law, which is disgusting, passed, that when you inherit a rental property from your parents, that you also inherit their property taxes. It's an outrage. So be grateful that you got that. I would suggest you raise your rents to something reasonable, and I'm sure that you have Medicare, whatever, to take care of your health needs. But it's, you're very lucky. I'm 81. I'm still working because nobody left me any property.
hey,
So,
Dorothy,
I love you, Mike. I'm glad you listen to KPFK. I'm helping get that situation with the building resolved for you.
Thank you. But also, actually, if you could help a little bit too, and that Susie's supposed to be on the call. And
I sent a text to Susie with
I
her
spoke
with
to her
the link.
earlier. Yeah.
With the
I'm
link,
on.
Mike.
Oh, okay. Hi, Susie.
I've been
There's-
on the whole
okay.
time. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
I'm
see you
here.
there, Susie. Well, welcome. Look, final question for Assemblymember Lee, and then I think we're going to
Hi,
go
Susie.
to organizing. And please unmute Robert Kaplan. Yes.
Hey, AB 1482 has a sunset clause about 2030. So after that, rent's going to go sky high, in my opinion. Also, there's a lot of ads here on TV about anti-33 that says it's going to overturn over 100 affordable housing laws, which I don't think is true.
Yeah, what about that claim? That's been on almost all of them. That's almost a tag they go out with. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just say is that, yes, AB 1482 is really important, which was our just cause and stabilization of rent, rent control basically throughout the state. If there is indeed that sunset clause, then of course we're gonna have to have another fight before 2030, hopefully, and it's gonna be a big ugly one, and I'll be around for it. So, but we'll hopefully get it through again. But if if Prop 33 were to pass, it changes. It's just a very kind of like very technical answer. It changes the underlying law, which is Costa-Hawkins, a lot of things, and there's a lot of other bills that, of course, touch these code sections and stuff. So yes, and this is the thing about a lot of their arguments. They're very they're correct on technicality, but it doesn't really mean anything. You know what I mean? Like, of course, it touches the underlying text of Costa-Hawkins and all the other bills that have touched and nibbled it. If that really means anything meaningful, no, because we as a legislature every single year, and we as a people with propositions change the laws every other year too. And it's not like it's the Constitution, right? You can't change the Constitution ever, which I don't agree with. But you know, it's not that same argument. So I would just say is that I think it's probably technically true that it touches the same code sections that other bills do, but does that really mean a bad thing? I don't think so.
Yeah, that was how I mean, again, the neoliberal era that we've just lived through, and Costa-Hawkins is an example of this. There's been a lot of legislation that passes that has so much detail, and supposedly things that can allow for cost containment that then, of course, never get acted on, or whatever. Multitudes of subsections to bills and ways they impact everything that's related to them. So I really viewed that as exactly as Alex put it. Well, so I didn't want to have to keep you too much longer. Our economist Mark Paul, everybody should know, pre-recorded his what we're about to play in a little bit. And Alex, if you have to take off, I can send that to you. I can email it to you because Mark's a brilliant economist at Rutgers. He wrote a piece, I'll try to put it in the chat again, in American Prospect, which was really the sort of best sweeping short article I could find. I've worked with Mark on a number of things. He works with AOC's office on developing the CCC, which is a climate core project, and he's an advocate for a 21st century economic bill of rights like we are here at PDA. So he's a great economist, and I just want to actually thank you, Alex. If you want to hang out. But what I thought we would do right now is bring forward Mike Olis and Susie Shannon. And thank you so much, Alex Lee. And and by the way, Alex should also know that we are recording this, and we're gonna take some of the things you said there, because a lot of the questions are the details that you as an assembly member knew and could answer so eloquently. So we'll be sharing the whole interview, but we may also take little bites of it out, and we'll share those with you if we choose to do that. Okay. Thank you so much. So Mike Olis and Susie Shannon, and why don't we do a little organizing right now, and then we're going to hear from economist Mark Paul. And I encourage everybody to hang out for what Mark's contribution is, because again, as we've seen these ads across the state, they're leading with this sweeping macroeconomic argument where the authority of the economist is saying this will kill affordable housing and the development of affordable housing in California. And not only is that mistaken, it is not true that there is a consensus among economists these days about the damage that rent control does to the housing market. In fact, quite the opposite. So what I want to do right now, first of all, is add into the chat the sign-up sheet again to join our PDA team, to join our Yes on Prop 33 PDA team. And our next meeting is going to be Tuesday evening. And I just put into the chat the Google sign-up form. Please open that up and just sign up. Actually, at the bottom now, it includes some upcoming dates for our campaign to get Yes on Prop 33 to win. And you can choose which of those meetings you want to attend. And one of the things we're going to be introducing now is something that we've never done at PDA before, which is to use a 21st century piece of digital technology to reach people in ways that digital devices can be effective to get them to understand where we stand on a campaign and encourage through a friend-to-friend set of contacts. So you to your family members, you to your friends, you to your coworkers, whoever in your contacts, sending out messages asking them to support Prop 33. And the software is actually flexible enough that this will have other uses too as we move forward in the campaign. But though that will be the first project. And with that, I would like to bring up Mike Olis, who's a fantastic organizer who I got to know through his years with Our Revolution, from his work across the country. He's Indiana-based, but he introduced me to this app. And Mike is going to come forward and give us a better sense of what this can achieve for this campaign, why it's important, this kind of instrument at this hour where we're getting blitzed by this propaganda from the realtors and the apartment owners, corporate-backed group, and the capacity to clarify to people we know that a yes on 33 vote is essential. This kind of organizing is something that I've greenlit. So welcome, Mike Olis. How you doing?
Hey, Alan, thank you so much. And what an amazing conversation. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, where we used to have the cheapest housing in the country for a big city. And those prices have gone through the roof over the last 5 years. So even in a place like Indianapolis, where we're used to low housing prices. Our housing stock has probably tripled in the last 5 to 10 years, and it's definitely putting a crunch on all communities across the country. And it's great to see California taking the lead on here, because I know it's probably the worst in California compared to other places. Because about everybody I know in California has roommates. It seems like that everybody is really struggling to pay rent and to or pay mortgages and support their families because of how expensive it is. Uh, and so just want to give an anecdote real quick, Alan. I was talking to two California-based friends about Prop 33 last week, both who are organizers in the environmental field, and one lives in the Valley and one lives in the East Bay, and neither one had heard about Prop 33. And so I told Alan this, and he was like, "What? They don't watch TV?" And I guess not. That as much advertising and anti Prop 33 propaganda that there's still a huge section of people who do not know about it. And a huge section of people that might need to be persuaded. And the quickest way to do this, and the most effective way to do this, is just really to make sure our friends, and I see the YouTube's also, yeah, I heard it's all over YouTube. The most important thing we can do is to make sure our friends and our family know about what's going on with this vote, right? I mean, obviously the California ballot is a lot of referendums, a lot of voting happening on this ballot. So we really need to make sure that everybody in our network, our social network, our family network, our friends network is aware of Proposition 33. And so over the next, starting this week and heading, probably every day till Election Day, we want to make sure that, the PDA network and the Progressive network, across California, but really can be across the state, because everybody knows friends and family who live in California can participate. We just want to make sure that everybody we know is contacted about the situation. And so I'll ask a couple things. One is here in the chat room, please click on the link that Alan dropped on to join our friend bank team and our phone bank team. Friend banking is basically where we're going to use this app where we're going to go out and get our friends our family to understand what's going on with Proposition 33. And so, please click on that tonight. I think we had over 70 people on here at one point. And, 70 people reaching out to 100 contacts is going to make a huge difference. Every vote is going to count. Every contact we make is going to discount millions of dollars in negative and misleading political spending. And so that's why this campaign, this effort can be so important to really put our relational organizing to task and our networks to use. So I'll stop there and answer any questions or get any reaction and pass the mic.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate to everybody. I mean, look, I certainly, as the head of PDA, am flooded my texts and my emails with ads from campaigns. And for somebody to receive a message from someone they trust and someone they know is something that's entirely different. And in this, using this software, you have the ability to texture the message to the individual you send it to, if you like. You also have, of course, copy and paste from what we'll be providing. But I think it's incredibly important for us as progressives, and I think the respect that progressives have and PDA has across California, for us to affirm our support to the people we know, and then try to get them to do the same to the people they know, and really just blast out this information. Because, again, on the one hand, there are people who simply, look, there are people right now who are politically engaged, but they're so consumed with the worry around the presidential election that they may not be focused on California politics, even though they're living in California. And so we need to make them aware about, a yes vote on Prop 33 is the way to go on this. And then, of course, to contact the people who trust us and know us. And that's the idea here. So please sign up again on the Google form. And the next meeting we're going to have a midday meeting this week doing this. And when you come on the meeting on Tuesday and then the meeting again on Thursday, you'll have the opportunity to do this. We'll be doing this all together. You'll be taught how to use what is a very user-friendly piece of technology that you'll be able to download onto your computer or your phone. So, am I getting all that all right on computer and phone? It works, Mike?
Yep, it'll work on easiest on your phone or using a browser, and we'll be here to train everybody and to sit there and work with people, and we'll contact our friends together at the same time. So it feels like you're part of a phone bank, but you're actually just reaching out to your friends. So it's a friend bank, and
And
we'll do it together and make it simple and troubleshoot in real time on Zoom as we do this.
And of course, if you do open that up, there's also an option to just sign up for our phone banking team. And of course, we at PDA are going to now start writing with some substance on some articles that we hope to publish around the state on this issue. And we'll send those out via email, and we'll continue to communicate with PDA members via email as well. But we want to build a phone banking team, and we want to build this friend banking team. Please sign up again on the Google form. And Susie, anything to add? And Susie Shannon, Mike Olis.
Yes, a lot to add.
Right.
I would say, first of all, if you live in California, if you could get out your ballot and mark yes on Proposition 33 now, so that you don't forget, even if you don't know, what else you're voting for, just mark it now so that you know that you've got the right thing marked. I also want to say, I understand that it's important to debunk a lot of what's going on from the other side. And yes, we're getting outspent 3-1 on commercials. But I will say the good news is that for all that the other side is doing, they are not moving in the polls. And Tom Bannon, who's the head of the California Apartment Association, which represents these, billionaire corporate landlords, basically was interviewed recently and said they need to raise $150 million to defeat Prop 33, and they thought they could only raise 60 million. So these are like the numbers that we're talking about. I mean, a lot of this, we have an amazing grassroots effort too that we have put out in addition to, the paid advertising. And that includes over 50 million texts that have been sent. Over 1 million people have been called directly on the phone. We have incredible positive IDs, which is obviously what you need for the Get Out the Vote effort. As Alan Minsky stated, we've been putting ads like on the Dodger games and very well placed also on MSNBC and CNN. But really, it's also going to rely on California Vote because we are, pretty much neck and neck. We're ahead in the polls, but, we don't know where things are going to go in the next 2 weeks. So, calling friends and family, making sure your colleagues understand that this is the one thing that they can do to help tenants. The average cost of a 2-bedroom apartment in the city of Los Angeles is now $3,742 a month. Who can afford that? You have to be making over $110,000 a year in order to not be rent burdened and afford a market rate 2-bedroom apartment. Can your Starbucks barista afford that? No. Can retailers who are working, retail workers who are working at Target afford that? No. Most moderate income people can't afford that. Definitely our low income tenants can't. It's creating gentrification. For every 5% increase in homelessness, in rent, 2,000 more people become homeless. We have 186,000 people now who are homeless in the state of California. More people here that are rent burdened and homeless than anywhere in the entire country. These are the reasons to vote for this. I know everybody wants to be on this market frame, but as George Lakoff has told us, don't think of an elephant, lead you to think of an elephant. So we need to be on the frame of helping tenants. Tenants make half of what landlords make. And that's really important to understand. It's also important to understand that this doesn't create rent control. It doesn't have any effect on AB 1482. That law stays in place in the state of California, and any city that decides not to enact rent control, AB 1482 is still in effect. It also creates, a ceiling for us at a 10% rent cap. But we need to go deeper, and this allows cities that need to go deeper to have maybe a 3% increase in rent as opposed to a 10% increase in rent. It allows them to do that. They also, like in the city of Los Angeles, which has rent control for buildings built in 1978 or before, they actually have different laws for mom and pops than they do for corporate landlords. And that's very important to understand, because we do understand that the plight of mom and pop landlords, and most cities understand the difference between corporate landlords and our mom and pops. The state law does that. Most of our city laws do that, particularly when it comes to tenant relocation assistance. So we just need to let everybody know, rent control has been the law in the United States since 1919. It has been in effect somewhere in the country since 1919. It doesn't do any of the things that the other side is saying. There's no impact on new construction. UC Berkeley study, a USC study, and 32 economists from across the United States who wrote a letter to President Biden saying that there's no empirical evidence that this has any impact on housing supply. In addition, when Massachusetts lost, they eliminated rent control in the state, there was no uptick or increase in housing supply. So the inverse is true as well. So I just want people to know, to the extent that you reach out to friends and family, and definitely please join in the friend banking, and doing all that, we can win. I mean, we're neck and neck right now. And we have another poll coming out tomorrow. But things are looking really good. And thankfully, even though we're being overspent, the other side has not moved in the last 2 weeks in the polls. So in fact, they've gone down 4 points. And I think that's partially also due to the fact that, we are advertising, we do have ads, we are running a traditional campaign alongside of this really successful grassroots campaign to reach out, and to have 50 million texts, and we're approaching 1 million calls, direct calls to people with these incredible positive IDs from that. So just get out your ballot, mark it yes for Prop 33, please spread the word.
After taxes, average salary in Los Angeles is below $6,000. So if the average rental is 3,700 plus, that is more than half of the average salary. And we know that the average salary in Los Angeles is, on average, looking artificially high because there are very, very wealthy people in Los Angeles, none of whom are renting. Okay. So that is certainly something that impacts the average salary received in a city like Los Angeles, as it would be in a city like New York, where you have a 1% whose average annual salary is astronomical often. So that skews that considerably higher. And that's insane that the average 2-bedroom apartment rental is could probably gobble up 75% of the average salary for the people who rent.
Yeah, it's unaffordable.
Yeah,
it's unaffordable. Yeah. And that's in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's in Los Angeles. Yeah. And of course you did mention 2-bedroom households, so there could be 2 people, but even so, I mean, that's just insane,
Well, yeah, you could be a waitress with 2 kids and not be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah. And yeah, you're saying apartment, not a 2-bedroom house, folks. Just if anybody's missing that detail. Thank you so much, Susie. And you are absolutely running a brilliant campaign, and just huge props to you. So thank you so much. And with that, what I'd like to do is just let's finish the stack. And then, since it's pre-recorded, and again, we'll send out to everybody who we'll post the dialogue with Mark Paul, but stick around and listen. And after that, I'll be available to answer questions. And then we can even play the Ro Khanna dialogue that we had the other day after the Mark Paul dialogue. All of these will be again posted and made available. And they'll also be probably clipped up to have tighter sound bites in support of Prop 33 as well. But let's go through the stack right now. I think everybody has spoken already, so we're just going to go Mike, Robert, Dorothy, Robert, and we're trying to go quick here, folks. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, okay. So, when you're talking about, and I agree, rents are high based on what kind of money people make, but look at it from the other side. In Southern California, just an ordinary house in a nice area like Pasadena, where I have my rental, is like $1 million to $1.5 million. That's a regular 3-bedroom house,
right,
in a nice area. So if that's what it costs to get into that rental market, people talk about high rents, and I agree, they're high, it's expensive. But to make a reasonable rate of return, again, my rate of return on that house was like a little over 2%. I would be better off just selling the house and putting the money in the bank, because I can get 4 to 5%. I'm just saying, look at it from the other perspective.
No, your case is not persuasive to me. I am a homeowner. If I rented out my house, I don't know what margins you're dealing with. For me, of course, I'd have to live somewhere else. But if I was renting out this house, and the amount of money I would make from it in this neighborhood in Highland Park would be incredible windfall of wealth for me. So as it stands right now.
But you would have to rent another house. I mean, that you can't.
There are other options people have in life as to why they might move out of a house. Maybe, you're involved in a new romance and you move in with the person. Then there's no added.
Right. But I'm just saying, for a single family homeowner to get into the rental market, they have to spend $1 million to $1.5 million. They would be better off just keeping their money in the bank. What I'm saying is, you're driving people out, you're driving mom and pops out of the housing market, because they won't get into it. It doesn't make any sense to buy a rental in Southern California anymore. It just doesn't.
Susie, do you want to comment?
Well, yeah, except for the fact that your property is appreciating every year. So
Right.
you're actually, you're not in a static situation.
And
your
it-
property
and it's
is
also-
appreciating. And if you could just let me have a say here, you also have a fair rate of return as a constitutional right in the California Constitution. So if you fill out a form, you can, if there is rent control, you can fill out a form which shows that you're not getting a fair rate of return for your property, and then you can get that increase for your rent. So it's like what you're saying isn't actually true. Landlords actually have a constitutional right to a fair return. The people who don't have the rights right now are the tenants. They don't have a right to a fair and reasonable rent, and they're getting squeezed out. I mean, people are having to leave California. We've lost 1 million people in the last 5 years because they can't afford to live here. So I understand that housing is considered a commodity for you. I understand that this is a way that you're getting rent, but we also have to think about the renters, and we cannot be on the landlord frame for this entire, PDA Zoom. We also have to be thinking about tenants. We have people who are becoming homeless, and we have 5 people dying on the streets of Los Angeles every single day. I am a health commissioner, okay? And I know that there are people who are homeless now who have underlying health conditions who tonight are going to die. So I am sorry that some people feel like they're not going to get a fair rate of return, but people are dying. And it's almost like talking about Medicare for all from the insurance frame, and how the insurance companies keep saying that their employees are going to be laid off. And we're saying, but people are dying and they need health care. So that's the same thing here. People are dying. They need to be in housing. We have 186,000 people who are homeless. We have more people rent burdened than anywhere in the United States. We need to be able to control these rents in order to keep people from dying. I I don't even know how else to say it.
Thank you. No, it's absolutely spot on. And thank you, Sue. So let's go to Robert Hanson, Dorothy, then Robert, and then we're going to have economist Mark Paul. And thank you for that, Mike Fowler, in the chat and your previous offer. Robert Hanson, please unmute. Robert Hanson.
Oh,
Again. Yeah, you,
I'm
you
sorry.
have-
There we go. There we go. How do I find ads for Prop 33 that I can share on my TikTok channel? And the second question is, who is paying this high rent that's over 3,000 a month?
Tons of people are. And Susie Shannon, where can people find these really exceptional ad that you've been running and that I did see on the baseball game the other day?
Sure. So our ads are on our YouTube page. So you can go to Yes on 33 on YouTube, or you can go to yeson33.org. And on the very bottom of the web page, there's like a little link, and that link actually shows, you can click on the little link to go straight to YouTube from there. And they're all on there. And the Kamala ad should be on there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy Reich. Please unmute, Dorothy, or you keep your hand down, Dorothy.
Hi, I just want to say, and Susie, check me if I'm wrong, that the 186,000 homeless is an undercount, because that doesn't count people who have moved in with relatives, who are couch
That's
surfing,
right.
or living,
That's
you know,
right.
who aren't counted. And these people will eventually wind up in the streets.
That's right. Yep. People go from being rent burdened and then falling behind in rent, getting evicted, or knowing that they can't pay rent, so moving in with family members, and then after they've overstayed their welcome, they usually end up homeless. But I mean, we have PhD students living in their cars. We have, people who have just entered the workforce living in their cars. There was a hotel worker who actually ended up dying in her car. Nobody knew she was living in her car, but she couldn't afford to live anywhere else, and she died living in her car. I mean, this is just the norm now. These are just, people who you never thought would become homeless, who are ending up becoming homeless because they simply can't afford the rent because it's just too damn high.
Thank you so much. And Robert Kaplan, please unmute.
I asked by for the people that are disabled, elderly, I don't know, SSI, they only make about $1,180 a month. And they're at risk of becoming homeless because rent is going up faster than the cost of living adjustment. And I know a person that's in a shelter here in Sacramento, and it's a real hellhole. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. And when I did when Susie was talking and I did the little research on the cost, the average annual salary for an American for somebody in Los Angeles, and then the average cost of rent that Susie cited. Google now produces an AI overview, and it says this in the very short 3 paragraphs. The third paragraph: the cost of living in Los Angeles is twice the national average, primarily due to housing costs. And I think we all know that. And Mike, we're done. We're going to close out this conversation, Mike. And but I would like now to go to Mike Fowler for his final thoughts, and then we're going to ask everybody to stay on while we play the dialogue with economist Mark Paul. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, what I want to add to it is simply that my house, for instance, that I bought I mentioned this at the PDA town hall last week. My house that I bought for $120,000 in the 80s is now worth literally 10 times that, 1.2 million. I am living on Social Security, and according to Zillow, the rent for my house would be $5,000 a month. If I had to rent my house, I would eventually go homeless, because that 5,000 is like 2.5 to 3 months of my Social Security income. And, I don't want, I'm personalizing this, but it just shows how a regular middle class person is affected by these landlords that keep raising the rates. And I can also tell you, and this is just kind of an aside, here in San Diego a few years ago, we had a big building boom of high-rise apartment buildings. At night, if you would look at those buildings, there were no lights on, because they were built and sold to people, to probably some of these same billionaires, to hold on to without anybody in it, and then sell it a year or two later for a massive profit. So you know,
Yes, no, for
realize that's a little off topic, but it's just related to what we're talking about. The bottom line is most people can't afford to pay rent, especially when they get older.
right, and it speaks to the absence, the California incentive structures and the zoning laws and everything have added up to builders not producing affordable housing, and to pursue the kind of investment building that you described. And that's happened actually in a number of the major metropolitan areas in the world, where luxury housing was being built without even an appetite for it, because these were seen as positive investments for capital that was roaming the earth for solid investments in the wake of the 07-08 crash. And that's been a dynamic in, Paris, London, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, etc. Not a phenomenon in the rest of the country, but the rest of the country doesn't have enough affordable housing either. But again, this is a great opportunity for the people of California to set the country on the right course by passing Prop 33 on November 5th and voting right away, as Susie said. Do that. So I would encourage everybody to educate themselves on all ballot propositions and all their local races, and certainly anchor your vote with a yes on Prop 33.
Great job. Alan is, by the way, a member of the PDA-CA steering committee. So that's the hat he's wearing tonight, I guess.
Well, actually, the Progressives for Democracy in America, the 501c4 is the official. We also are we're supporting Prop 33 through the 501c4, and then PDA-CA is supporting it. So it's a partnership of those two organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, great meeting. And thanks a lot, Alan, for your work. And I want to thank those other members of the steering committee that joined the call and were standing by in case their help was needed. And good night, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll probably see you tomorrow in the PDA town hall.